gonna go ahead and make the Irish coffee. So if you have ingredients at home, go ahead and follow along. You can see my half-drunken Irish coffee here already, but we're gonna go ahead and make it from scratch. Always warm up your mug. When you're making hot cocktails, you always wanna warm up your glassware so that it stays hot. All right, put that away. You can see all that steam. Ooh, it's boiling hot. So I'm gonna set it to the side so I don't burn myself. And the Buena Vista Cafe uses 2 brown sugar cubes. I personally don't like brown sugar cubes because it's hard to dissolve everything. I don't like granules in there, so I went ahead and made a Demerara sugar syrup. This is a very simple recipe. All it is half hot water, half brown sugar, put it together, mix it up so that the brown sugar completely dissolves and you have your syrup. And so, wow, this is warming up a little bit. This should be pretty warm now. Oh yeah, that's hot. All right, I'm just gonna pour that. And you just add it straight into your mug. So while it's hot, I'm gonna go ahead and grab my jigger and just pour half an ounce in there. So syrup is what the Dead Rabbit uses, so I'm following their method. Afterwards, you go ahead and grab your hot coffee. So the coffee that I'm using, you can just use your favorite coffee, but if you're interested, I use the Kicking Horse coffee. This one's pretty dark. I just love black coffee by itself, and so this one's perfect for me. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add right there. That's good. So you kind of guesstimate, there's really no measuring needed. I mean, you're gonna probably burn yourself if you're trying to measure with a metal jigger, right? And so you just gotta eyeball it. There's really no right or wrong here, but what I'm gonna use is everyone's favorite Jameson whiskey. And so I'm gonna go ahead and pour 1.5 ounce in there. Straight in. And you can see that it leaves an inch of space ready for that cream to go in. And so what I have here is just a protein shaker. It's really simple. There's no special device that you need for the whipped cream. All you need is just heavy whipping cream, and you can actually use a cocktail shaker. You can use a closed container. It doesn't matter. I like to use the protein shaker because the ball inside makes it easier. I already shook this up because I don't want to make a commotion right now. It's pretty damn loud. And so with that, it's already shaken up. I can go ahead and just top it off. And so you don't need a spoon to layer it. You can actually just pour it straight in because the fat content of the whipping cream makes it so that it floats very easily on top of your coffee. And there you go, your Irish coffee. But wait, you probably already know if you attended the first 2 classes that we're not done yet. Everyone always tastes with their eyes. It's very important that you add a garnish. Now, the garnish shouldn't be flourishing crazy because how are you supposed to drink your drink when you have a giant lemon wheel with a pineapple and a leaf in there? You're just poking your nose the entire time, right? Keep it simple, make it so that it's aesthetically pleasing, but also that it enhances the drink. And so for this one, I followed the Dead Rabbit where they use a whole nutmeg and a grater, and they just grate whole nutmeg on top, just like that. There we go. And here we have our Irish coffee. Ooh, careful not to spill that. This is a mixed cocktail, so this calls for a mixing glass. You can go ahead if you're at home. Of course, this recipe will be sent out later, but you can always use a cup, a tin cup, for example, like one of these. It's a mixing glass actually, but you can use any sort of just holding device that holds ice. You can stir it. That's totally fine. And so first, she adds absinthe. And so I don't have the specific absinthe that they used. Hold on, let me open chat just in case you have questions so I can see. And so the one I'm going to use is St. George Absinthe, which is a local distillery here in the Bay Area. It comes from Alameda. Absinthe is mainly flavors of wormwood. I can probably do a episode about, of course, on absinthe just alone, because absinthe is, as you know, it used to be illegal because people thought it made people hallucinate. Kind of nuts, right? This is just the alcohol making people going, they're just drunk. And so you go ahead and add 2 dashes. I'll just add a little bit more just in case, because a dash could vary from container to container. So I just use a dropper bottle where I hold it, because absinthe can last for a long time. This is a 60% ABV, which is super high. So it can last indefinitely on the shelf. Next, we're gonna grab, you're probably familiar with this one, our Campari. Campari is a very, very popular French aperitif. Sorry, not French, excuse me, Italian. And we're gonna go ahead and add 0.75 ounces, so 3/4 of an ounce in bright red flavor, color. So fun fact about Campari, the red coloring now is actually food coloring, but back in the day when Campari was first created, they used a natural coloring that made it red from cochineal, which is a type of insect. They crushed the insects and then it created that red dye, and that's actually what makes it red. And don't worry, there's no insects in here. It's food coloring. But anyways, onwards, we're gonna go ahead and use, yes, it is. It does sound kind of disgusting, but that was what it was made of back in the day, cochineal. And so here we have our banana liqueur. I'm using Drillard. They also use, Gifford actually, which comes from the same country, I believe France. But I do not have Gifford, so I'm just gonna go ahead and replace that with Drillard. So 1/2 ounce of banana liqueur. Afterwards, we use creme de cacao, also from Drillard. So this adds chocolate notes. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this or where Jillian was going with this. You'll see soon enough. Also 1/2 ounce. And last but not least, we have our spirit of choice, and it is Redbreast 12-year single pot still Irish whiskey. And so people call this Christmas in a glass. So cocktails are quite creative in the sense that you can just accentuate the flavors of that, or you ideally should, because that's what the purpose of the spirit is, right? You accentuate the flavors of the spirit. And so we're gonna go ahead and add 2 ounces of our Redbreast in. And so here it's basically a Irish whiskey version of a Manhattan. So we're not using rye, we're putting Christmas in a glass. So we're gonna go ahead and add our ice. So let me just make sure I don't splash everywhere. There we go. Now, 3rd one. Here we go. All right. That over. And so we're gonna go ahead and stir this up. 20 seconds. You can go ahead and time me. While we mix this up, we're adding dilution to the drink, so water. And we're gonna make it a little, basically water is a very important content in cocktails because it adds dilution and makes the spirit a lot more palpable. Oh, I can already smell the cinnamon, the banana. Ooh, very good. Right, so afterwards, you can strain that. But before this, we're gonna go ahead and strain it into a Nick and Nora glass. So, just like that, Christmas in a glass. Wow. So bananas instantly, chocolate makes it smooth, and then you do still get that taste and aromas of the Redbreast. So it's a fantastic cocktail. So it's probably even better if I use exactly the ingredients that they use, but I just could not find them. And so St. Patrick's Day is next Wednesday. And actually, did you know that March 3rd was actually International Irish Whiskey Day? So Any of you drink Irish whiskeys? Featuring a lot of Irish whiskeys, you've probably known of the familiar Bushmills right here, or your favorite Jameson. So these are very popular light blends, but there's also others that are a lot more craft related nowadays, such as tealing and Methods and Madness. So these are all interesting distilleries popping up in Ireland nowadays, but it was not always the case. There used to be a lot of distilleries, and then it went down to almost 3, almost close to extinction because of various historical events that I'll go over shortly. And so with that said, let's go ahead and go over what is Irish whiskey. So Irish whiskey is different from Scottish whiskey in that it's distilled 3 times, not 2 like Scotland's. They also use pot stills most of the time, different from Scotland's when you're using the continuous column stills. So the difference with that is that a pot, you can imagine, is a giant pot, right? They put all the grains, the malt, everything that they want to distill inside of that giant pot, distilled, and then they clean everything up. Versus a still, a continuous giant tall column still, you have lots of hatches where they can continuously put grains inside, so it's continuously distilling. So it's very different in that sense. And the Irish are very proud of blending different flavors together. This is different from Scotland, which when you hear of Scottish whiskey, you're probably thinking single malt, right? Because Scottish whiskey likes to accentuate the flavor of that single malt, versus Ireland, they really like to blend different flavors together, mix and match, and then have some harmonious flavor come together. And so you're familiar, I showed you the Jameson earlier. Tullamore Dew is a popular one, which are lighter blends. And then there's the pure pot still ones, such as Redbreast 12, which is a heavier depth of flavor because it's just single pot. And so of course, right now I'm gonna go ahead and make an Irish coffee. And so you've probably very familiar, or you've had it before if you're from the Bay Area, where I'm from. Here, the Buena Vista Cafe is very famous for their Irish coffee. If you've been there before, they make over 2,000 Irish coffees a day. Well, this is of course pre-pandemic, right? And it's a super popular spot. And so if you do have some ingredients of the Irish coffee, you can go ahead and grab those now while I go over the brief history, and then we'll make it together. And so the Irish coffee, as you know, in the cocktail world, there's just so many tales to be told. And so from the Dead Rabbit in New York City Grocery and Grog Bar, the tale of Jonathan Swift in 1705, who just mixed whiskey with his coffee and cream, and there you go, Irish coffee. Simple as that. It was just a very harmonious blend. But the story you're probably familiar with is that this drink was invented by a chef by the name of Joseph Sheridan in 1943. So this gentleman was, wow, he was a brave man, let me tell you that, because his job application to this airport restaurant that he applied to was just, quote, "Dear sir, I'm the man for the job. Yours sincerely, Joe Sheridan." Wow. You know, if I applied to a job like that, I'd probably get a job. I don't know if I could get a job with that kind of with type of courage and bravery, right? But because of his brashness, people were like, wow, this is out of the blue. I'm just gonna invite him over, give him an interview, and he got the job. And so there he created the Irish coffee. And since then, the airport has closed, but he moved over to what is now called the Shannon Airport at Ireland. And this is where he created the Irish coffee. He made a bunch, and he would welcome visitors to Ireland that arrived at Shannon Airport with that Irish coffee. And so there was one day that a reporter from the Bay Area, he went over to the Shannon Airport, and he tasted the Irish coffee. He's like, oh my gosh, this is really good. And he was coincidentally friends of the owner of the Buena Vista Cafe in San Francisco, Jack Copler. Jack immediately heard and was like, oh my God, I need to recreate this drink. And so he put lots of things together, but just could not recreate the flavors that the reporter experienced in Ireland. And so Jack immediately reached out to Joe, offered him a job in San Francisco, and Joe Sheridan traveled to San Francisco in 1952, where he got a job and started serving up the Irish coffee at the Buena Vista Cafe. And it just went wild. Like, you can Google, you can YouTube, there's plenty of videos you can find of the Buena Vista Cafe serving up Irish coffees. It's ridiculous. So while I sip on this, or if you made it yourself as well, let's just talk about Irish whiskey. So Irish whiskey was close to extinction, as I mentioned, in the past 2 centuries due to the destruction from the English, from all the world wars. It went from 150 distilleries down to 3. That's nuts, right? It was Bushmills, Middleton, and Cooley distilleries. So if we break down the history behind what happened, so the I can always not pronounce this word, but phylloxera, I believe, the plague in France that basically destroyed their entire fields of grapevines. People could not drink wine, and they had to turn to something else, an alternative for alcohol. And that was Irish whiskey, because it was close by. And so with that, Irish whiskey was dominating the market, just endless jugs. People were just buying it like crazy. But then during that time, column stills were invented. And that's when it enabled much faster turnaround time for the whiskey. And it also enabled lighter blends, as mentioned before. And so with that, there was just a variety of flavors, and people were just super interested into that aspect of whiskey. But then now you have the pot still whiskey, which was Ireland was still doing. And guess what the Irish did? They're like, no, I like my pot still. I'm not converting to that. And so they were stubborn. They were very, very stubborn, and they just were very prideful of their pure pot still whiskey. And so with that, they just continued to make the pot still whiskey. But then the demand for continuous still lighter blends was there. And so with that, just you see that supply and demand, it's off balance. And with that, combined with the World War I, World War II, trade routes were affected. And then especially with the prohibition happening in USA, where alcohol was basically banned, it was just tough for Ireland to keep up. And so with that, it went from 150 to 3. It was kind of sad, really, right? But nowadays, it's up and coming. Currently, there's at least 18 distilleries, and it's growing fast in resurgence. And thankfully, what happened was Middleton changed their ways, and Middleton's responsible for your favorite Jameson whiskey here. They changed their ways. They started doing lighter blends, which is what Jameson came from. And because of that, it just helped Irish whiskey stay on the world map. And more people started noticing Irish whiskey. And now it's that 18 distilleries where we have craft Irish distilleries, such as Teeling, which matures their whiskey in wine casks. And then you have even more out of the world Methods and Madness, who also do something unique, which is they mature in chestnut wood casks. And so with that, I just want to introduce also one bar that embodies that Irish fighting spirit just for the sake of St. Patrick's Day, which is the Dead Rabbit Grocery and Grog. Here I have their book. It is an amazing book filled with recipes and secret ingredients, and there we go. So the Dead Rabbit was a bar opened by 2 pioneering mixologists. We have Sean Muldoon and Jack McGarry. So Sean Muldoon is very, very coveted. Everyone loves him in the bar industry. He was a manager at the Merchant Hotel, and he was an amazing bar manager that brought the Merchant Hotel the world's best cocktail bar and won that award in 2010. And then you have his partner, Jack McGarry, who is a walking encyclopedia. That book that I just showed, it's most likely all him. And so he invented a lot of these drinks by just going back and researching pre-prohibition cocktails. Jerry Thomas, he's the modern Jerry Thomas, who is the inventor of the cocktail. And so with that, he reunited with Sean in in the Merchant Hotel first, and then they both went to New York City, where they opened the Dead Rabbit Grocery and Grog Bar. And because of his skills, because of his entrepreneurship and his knowledge of drinks, he won the International Bartender of the Year at 2013's Tales of the Cocktail at just 23 years old. An honor that is really coveted, and he is the youngest to ever do so, and still the youngest actually. So before I continue to chat a little bit more before making our next cocktail, I'm gonna go ahead and sip a little bit more of this Irish coffee before it gets cold. So good. Ooh, I gotta wipe off that white mustache of mine. So not only did Sean Muldoon and Jack McGarry bring the, not only them that brought the Dead Rabbit to worldwide recognition, they had a world-class team as well. So the bar director, or I would say the beverage director, Jillian Bose from the Dead Rabbit, is also responsible for a lot of the drinks on their menu. She was the head bartender, if you know the bar or you're familiar with the bar, Def & Co. She was the head bartender there, and she created a lot of creative cocktails and introduced a lot of creative award-winning menus. And with that, she transferred her skills over to the Dead Rabbit, where the Dead Rabbit was able to continue to win many awards. So with that, we do have 5 minutes left. I would like to leave this time for just questions, any type of conversation to be had. Feel free to type it in the chat. I'm going to be here for the next 5 minutes, just in case anybody would like to chat a little bit more about Irish whiskey, ask questions. I'm always happy to learn. I'm always happy to spread knowledge, whatever I know. But thank you very much again for joining. Again, my name is Horace. I host these free mixology courses once a month on Eventbrite. You can go ahead and check the schedule if you search up Horseations on Eventbrite. You can go ahead. You can also follow us on Instagram at Horseations. My website is also horseations.com. So feel free to check it out if you're interested. And I will, again, send out the recipe via the email. I will also edit this recording and the video just so you can find it on YouTube. I will send that out later as well, so that you get the recipes of both the Irish coffee and the Psycho Killer from Jillian Bose. Apologies. So cheers. What drink am I making for St. Patrick's Day? Ooh, good question. I'm probably going to start the day with Irish coffee. And green cocktails are super popular during our St. Patrick's Day. The thing is, green liqueurs are mostly all food coloring. It's really hard to find a naturally green liqueur out there. And so I'm not big of a fan. I mean, it's kind of hypocritical because I use Campari a lot, food coloring, but it just seems unnatural and for me. Any recipe for a green cocktail? I do actually have a sour appletini. It's a version of a martini, you can say. It just blends in. I can also share that if you would like in the chat. Just give me a second. And Connie, hi. Sorry, I totally forgot. So for the people on the recording, I would just like to go over some of the questions earlier. So let's see. So what drink am I going to make for St. Patrick's Day? And do I have a recipe for a green cocktail? So I'm going to go ahead and type that in the chat shortly. And Connie asks, what's my goal and mission behind hosting these events? How did I come up with the idea? So a little backstory, short backstory. I was always into cocktails starting in 2013. So I did not take it seriously until recently of 2018. And then the pandemic hit in 2020. And so because of that, it just gave me a lot of time to just research cocktails. I went to bars previously. I was just really fascinated by the mixology and the cocktail world. And so from all the knowledge I've gained, all the endless books I've consumed, there's still more to be consumed. I just want to share it with people. I just want to share the knowledge, all this trivia. People can also make these cocktails at home if they're interested. That's pretty much my main goal. I strive to try to make these so that it's not intimidating, because there are a lot of creativity, but also techniques that bartenders use to create these great tasting cocktails because you don't have all that equipment at home. But I try to make it so that we can do our best to replicate that so that you can still enjoy the cocktails at home. But of course, support your local bartenders if you're interested. If you love the bar, post-COVID, whenever that is, go to your local bar, shout out your bartender, support them, because there's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes on with creating a craft cocktail. Hope that answered your question, Connie. No problems. A green cocktail, I'm gonna go ahead and type it in. The sour appletini that I usually make. So it's 1.5 ounces of caramel vodka, and then 1 ounce of green apple liqueur, followed by 1 ounce, or let's say it varies depending on how tart you want it, because I like it tart, so I add 1 ounce, but not everybody likes it tart. And so you can add 3/4 of an ounce of fresh lemon juice or 1 ounce, and then add 1/4 ounce of simple syrup. So simple syrup, again, never buy simple syrup at stores. You can create it easily by yourself. Half sugar, half hot water, put it together, mix it up, there's your simple sugar. I'm sorry, 1/4 ounce of simple syrup, there you go. So the recipe is in the chat. I can go ahead and send that out as well. But this is a recipe that I usually follow for people that just love the very sour and fruity drinks. It's a very, very sweet. That's why I like to add more lemon juice, but that's actually a green cocktail that you can make on St. Patrick's Day. Of course, you're welcome. Let me know how it is. You're welcome, Tony. I hope you learned something new that you can go ahead and take your friends and say like, hey, did you know that Irish whiskey was almost extinct? Oh my gosh. You're welcome. So with that, it is already 2 minutes past 12:30. Thank you again for joining. If you're interested again, feel free to check out our one next month where I will go over the martini and how the martini came to rise to be one of the most iconic cocktails in the world. So thank you again for joining, everybody, and I will see you next month. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.